This is my bro Joker from the island, and this is Rafterman.
Hi, I'm Kevyn Major Howard. I played Rafterman in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. And I'd like to introduce you to an exciting new documentary about the making of the film.
I think the bizarre stories about Stanley Kubrick have been created because, he chooses not to do interviews, and so people have to make up stories about him.
I am Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, your senior drill instructor. Reveille! You will not like me.
I believe there's a tremendous amount of violence in there, and I know for a fact that Stanley Kubrick is an anti-violent type individual.
A groundbreaking new documentary exploring Kubrick's legendary war epic.
Actors are sometimes undisciplined enough not to go home and go to sleep at night, and they go out, and they come the next day and they haven't learned their lines.
Prepare yourself for the ultimate examination of this cinematic masterpiece. From its very inception, adapting the original novels.
How can you shoot women, children?
Easy! You just don't lead them so much!
The scriptwriting process, through the stunning art design, the unusual casting process, the challenging UK shoot through post-production, and its eventual release in 1987.
Turn over. Place of the interviews, roll 34.
Exclusive, never-before-heard interviews with the key players.
Private Joker has Born to Kill in his brain, and he has a peace sign on his heart.
Peace symbol, sir.
Here are the perspectives of lesser-known contributors such as supporting actors,
I'll fix it up, sir.
crew members, and other behind-the-scenes personnel.
Animal Mother cuts the head off the sniper.
Rare photographs, footage, production materials, and archival interviews.
It also suggests the sort of post-combat euphoria, which you see in Crazy Earl's face, after he shoots the guys that are running out of the building. That great look on his face of euphoric pleasure. Suddenly the music starts.
Oh, well, everybody's heard about the bird.
An in-depth and intimate journey into the making of one of Stanley Kubrick's most revered films, told by those who were there.
You're so ugly you could be a modern art masterpiece.
Modern art masterpiece, the making of Full Metal Jacket.
Hey, start the cameras. This is Vietnam, the movie.
Today, you people are no longer maggots. You're part of a brotherhood. From now on, until the day you die, wherever you are, every Marine is your brother. But always remember this, Marines die. That's what we're here for. But the Marine Corps lives forever. And that means you live forever.
If you want to see this film get made and officially be part of Kubrick's legacy, then check out the different levels of support and the great perks. Please, share this campaign with anyone you think may want to get involved.
Talk the talk. Do you walk the walk?
Looked like something, didn't it?
Thanks for watching. Roger out.
Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore storytelling on film, as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, theater, among other areas of the arts. My guests today are all filmmakers and producers who are currently raising funds to make a documentary on the making of Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket called A Modern Art Masterpiece, the untold story of the making of Full Metal Jacket. Lou Pizarro is an actor, producer, writer, and director. He is the creator of the hit show Operation Rico for Telemundo, and then the English version for True TV. He is also the creator, director, and producer of the hit TV show, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, Fugitivos de la Ley Los Angeles. I hope I have that somewhat right. On NBC Universo. Stephen Rigg is the producer director. He is a producer, director, and writer. In 2011, he founded the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society, which has 26,000 members. This led to the creation of the podcast Stephen produced called Kubrick's Universe, the Stanley Kubrick podcast, which is fantastic. Guests have included many Kubrick collaborators, such as Malcolm McDowell, Leon Vitelli, James B. Harris, to name just a few. And of course, Kevyn Major Howard, who is an actor and headshot photographer. He played Rafterman in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. He has over 30 film and TV credits, which include Sudden Impact that Clint Eastwood starred and directed, as well as Death Wish 2 with Charles Bronson. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning.
Wow, well said, man.
Thank you.
This is the first time I've had 3 people on. I've had 2 at the same time. This is my first time with 3 guests. So I'm excited to jump in. The first thing I wanted to ask you all was what got you all interested in making this documentary?
Who wants to lead?
Maybe I'll pick.
You're good at getting us revved up, Kevin.
Kevin, go ahead. You could take that.
Let me jump in on this. Working with Stanley Kubrick was a beautiful blessing in my life. Being a part of his legacy, I was very fascinated with meeting him, then working with him, and then becoming a so-called friend. He's a miracle talent in the film industry, as we all have watched his films over all the many years. My interest in this particular venture was to collaborate with talent such as Lou Pizarro, Stephen Rigg, Kelsey Howard, and a few of the producers that have come on board to explain to a new and young generation, those who may not be aware of the Stanley Kubrick talent, to bring that to the forefront in their generation, because he is that worthwhile knowing, and his films certainly are that worthwhile. So I went to these amazing gentlemen and I said, hey, let's sit down, let's give this some thought and see if we can make this go forward. And we all agreed that Stanley Kubrick needed to be identified for this new generation. And so here we are today.
Fantastic. What about you, Lou? What got you interested in jumping on board here?
Well, being a hard-charging devil's dog, we're Rock Semper Fi. Full Metal Jacket, it's every Marine's favorite movie. So, and it's kind of like our go-to Bible movie, if you will, So there's a lot of things. If you're not in the military, specifically the Marine Corps, I mean, there's a creed about this movie for us, So I've known Kevin for many, many years. We've done a lot of things together. He's awesome. He's mentored me. I'm a big fan of all his work. And, we've been talking about doing stuff together. We were going to do a movie together. And some of the stuff, had to do with the Full Metal Jacket. And all of a sudden, this thing just came to life. And Kevin gave me a call. We've been trying to do something like this for a long time. And he says, Lou, here it is. And I'm like, I'm in. So Kevyn Major Howard calls you, you answer the call. Because he is the major in charge here, guys. Right. So that's part of it. Yep.
Fantastic.
My coffee is good today, guys.
Hey, there you go. What about you, Stephen?
So I hooked up with Kevin via the podcast Kubrick's Universe that I do. So we interviewed Kevin. It was about a 3-hour conversation. We spoke about all sorts, and that was about 3 or 4 months ago. Maybe that episode hasn't gone out yet because it's going to take forever to edit because there's so much material in there. And now I've got to be careful what we put out in the podcast because we want to save some of these great stories for the documentary. Of course. So Kevin and I got on really well during the podcast, and Jason, our host, Jason Furlong as well. And we just got talking about it. And Kevin had been thinking about getting this off the ground. I mean, Kevin had already come up with a treatment and kind of a plan of action. And I'd been thinking about it separately for a few years. That we need a good Full Metal Jacket documentary because there's only been one, a 30-minute one, which wasn't very extensive. It hit all the main notes.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah, it's on the Blu. Yeah. On the one of the. There's many releases, but the Blu-ray I have has it. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called what's it called? Between something and evil, between good and evil, I think it's called. Documentary.
That's right. Yeah.
So we seem to have something going on in the conversation. So we kind of followed up later, and here we are.
Well, I mean, I can understand not wanting to share everything that people will see in this documentary, to have some surprises. But is there anything that you can all share that people can expect to be explored in the documentary? Kevin, is there anything you can mention?
You know, I want to share the kind of man he was behind the scenes, Mr. Kubrick. He's an extraordinary individual, and I don't really see an awful lot of exploration beyond the camera and the lens, which is what he was known for.
Right.
This is a more personal avenue for me. I was brought up by a great father who taught me how to be respectful. And Stanley has this demeanor that a lot of people were maybe unaware of. But I want to share some of that collaboration I spent with him and enlighten an audience as to who this man really was underneath the veil. Lou's got a wonderful interest in this because of where he wants to film these documentary moments. And I'll let Lou speak to that. Go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, so one of the things is that we want to show the audience, and we're only going to share a little bit with you guys on this, is where everything was depicted. Like, although Stanley Kubrick did not shoot in Vietnam, we will be going to Vietnam, and we'll be superimposing, shooting exactly what he depicted, you know, in London, in England, and, you know, the different parts that he shot. So, and we're going to be going to Da Nang. Although he didn't shoot there, we'll be there. We're going to be going through the Ho Chi Minh Trail. You know, although he didn't shoot there, we'll be there. So it's one of those rare things that we're going to combine. And Steven's going to do the same thing at his end. We're going to combine this to just give a different look of the mind of Stanley Kubrick, of what he was thinking. Because you cannot tell that he was not in Vietnam.
Oh, I know.
That's how good this man is.
It's unbelievable. It's funny because I've seen it a number of times, and I watched it again recently. And then when I was watching the special features on the Blu-ray, I was like, what do you mean they didn't shoot this in Vietnam? I just couldn't believe it. They shot this. I mean, that's just his genius, right? If I had read that in the past, I must have forgot, but you cannot tell at all that this is in England, which is incredible to me.
Yeah.
Stephen, was there anything you wanted? Sorry, Lou, did you have anything else to add there? I thought I cut you off. Okay, great.
Yeah. So on the topic of locations, which will play somewhat of a part in the documentary as kind of a texture that will perhaps run through the documentary. I will be covering the UK locations, of which there were quite a lot. People who've read about the film tend to think there was only 2 locations used for the filming, which is Beckton Gasworks, where all the Hue City scenes were shot, and then Basingbourne Army Barracks, where all the training camp stuff was. But beyond those 2 locations, there's another 10 locations that the cast and crew visited, such as the Norfolk Broads and RAS Windermere, Epping Forest, the Isle of Dogs, all sorts of places. So we'll visit those and get snapshots of those to compare with the, you know, then and now, what it looked like in the film, what it looks like now. So that'll be a small component. I think the broader context of the film will be interviews and getting the real story that's never been told. You know, we've heard Matthew's talked about it, the film a lot, and Vincent has. But we need to go deeper and speak to the extras, the crew members, the main actors, but not. See, there's a lot of actors in there, supporting cast, who have speaking parts, but they never seem to do interviews on the subject. So we just need to get all these hidden stories. I mean, Matthew's got great stories, Kevin's got great stories, we've heard some of these, but everyone's got great stories. So there's hundreds of stories out there, and we're going to do as best to speak to as many people as we can.
Wow, that's going to be something else for sure. I was curious for Stephen and Lou. I want to ask this to Kevin, but in a different way a bit later. But when do you both remember your first experience seeing this film, and has your feelings evolved about it each time you've seen it?
Oh yeah, I got to say it's one of those films that I was intrigued by it. Although when I first seen the film, I was not in the Marine Corps yet, but let me tell you, it inspired me and a lot of other Marines. And it's been inspiring till today. Like I always say this, the gunny in there, he's the nation's gunny. He's this planet's gunny. The world's gunny. Other planets, I'm sure, gunny, because in all different militaries, there's so many. They have their own Marines. And it's relanguage, and this, the gunny is there. Full Metal Jacket is every Marine's movie. It just really is. And just the way that Mr. Kubrick put it together, and then later on when I read how he did it, I was even more amazed. But it's just one of those things where, as a Marine, I lived it. I really did. And all my Marine brothers to today, they've lived it too, and every Marine, okay, we'll be long and gone, but every Marine for eternity is going to live this movie and know this movie and appreciate this movie. And that's kind of part of what we're doing in the documentary. Like Kevin said in the beginning, we want to leave this legacy for all generations to see and always go back, to Stanley Kubrick.
Right. Yeah, certainly.
So.
Stephen, what about you? Do you remember the first time you saw it?
Yes, it was the first Kubrick film I saw in the cinema. I was 17 in 87. I was bunking off college at the time because I didn't used to like the afternoon sessions at college. So I used to go to the cinema for about a year. Yes, so that was one of the films I watched there, and I was fairly blown away by it. I remember the biggest takeaway I got from it was Lee Ermey, all those scenes. It just going straight into the film, and that just hit you.
So brilliant.
And then over the years, it just gets better, like all Kubrick films do. The more you watch them, the better they get.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Kevin, I understand Kubrick actually tracked you down in Europe to do this film. Do I have that right?
Yeah, you do actually. I was on a hiatus from the industry itself, and I decided that Europe would be the place I would backpack for maybe a couple of years. I was traveling through Rome about 4 months into my trip. And I should preface this by saying this. A year and a half before that backpacking trip, Stanley had written a letter to me and asked if I wanted to do his film. All I had to do was write back and say yes in the letter. So, of course, I did. Now, 4 months later into my trip, I'm walking through the streets of Rome, tens of thousands of people on the street, and a lady walks straight up to me and she says, "You're Kevyn Major Howard." And I said, "Yeah." What? And then she said, "Stanley Kubrick has put the word out looking for you throughout Europe because nobody knew where you were going to be. And I've happened to spot you. Come back to my office." I believe it was Clint Eastwood's agent, Rosanna Palucci, got on the phone with Mr. Kubrick. Mr. Kubrick and I talked, and he said, "Do you want to do this film or not?" I said, "Absolutely, yes." And then he said, "Well, go on your merry way. I'll find you again." So I explained to him I was on my way to Greece. I sat down in Santorini for a few months, and I believed that maybe that was a surreal call. It didn't really happen. And then I phoned my agent and I said, "I'm still sitting here 4 months into my trip, sitting here on Santorini. And is this real?" And they said, "Yeah, Stanley's going to send you the script." And eventually the script arrived, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's unbelievable. And you were there for the entire shoot. Is that like the whole, and this was what I believe it was a year, or is it more than a year?
Actually 17 months worth of film.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
That's incredible.
Day one was the opening shot where Matthew and I and the Me Love You Long Time hooker. That was our first day of shooting, and the last day of shooting was us all singing Mickey Mouse walking through the dirt.
Now I understand that the scene. Now we all knew Kubrick did a lot of takes. it's well known that he did a lot of takes. And now the scene where you are walking with Matthew Modine and you are trying to convince him to send you into combat. You had mentioned that took 2 weeks. So in those, is he asking for you to change your performance each take? Is he specific with what he wants, or how did he direct you?
You know, Stanley's a very interesting director, and I'll say this about that. He would never, ever ask you to, he couldn't give you direction. As Stanley said to me once, I'm not a director. I don't know how to tell you what to do, but just change it. And he would do that after 3 weeks or 4 weeks of rehearsal on that particular scene. And so you were rooted in the foundation with the character, and you knew where your directions were. And then just as he was about to roll camera, he'd walk into your life and he'd just simply say, change it. And of course that alarms you, puts you on alert, and you find yourself finding a new way to maybe express, or because of the alarm system going off in your own brain, you just challenge yourself to find a new way. And I think it's what he's really doing is it's cause and effect. It's refreshing the foundation and show up for this performance, so to speak. Yeah, he's a very smart man.
And so do you recall now when he tracked you down to do this part, did you have to still audition, or was it just a direct offer?
It was a direct offer. He had seen, and two of his favorite actors were Charles Bronson and Clint Eastwood.
Right.
And he'd seen a third film I had done called Scared Straight, Another Story. He made that letter happen in my life, just simply saying, based on those 3 films, I want you to do this.
Okay.
And so I accepted. Absolutely, yes.
Big. Sorry,
fan.
go ahead. And do you recall? Right, that's right. And do you recall what your first meeting was like with him? Were you nervous to meet him? Do you remember what that was like?
I remember what it was like. We all met in the dressing room. All the actors had come to the set. He was handing out our wardrobe pieces himself. He was a man of detail. He wanted to touch everything. So when we received our wardrobe, I remember sitting there with him. I wasn't as much in awe of Stanley Kubrick at that moment because I was very familiar with his work. However, there was a gentleman I really was in awe of. I desperately wanted to work with once I saw him in a film called Birdie, and that was Matthew Modine.
Right.
Matthew Modine to me seemed like the Jimmy Stewart of our times. Yeah. So that was my experience with Stanley. Stanley was very welcoming, seemed easy to work with at that moment. And it was the adventure of these new comrades in film, the cast, that we were all going to explore together. And I guess my feeling towards Matthew was, here's a surefire talent. Oh my goodness gracious. How blessed am I really? Then it began to drift back to Stanley being who he was. And I think after this many years, like George C. Scott went through with Stanley when he did Dr. Strangelove, George C. Scott was very unhappy with Stanley's film and him in it. And for 7 years, I believe it was, he did not talk to Stanley. He was very angry at Stanley because of the performance he had laid out in Dr. Strangelove. However, George C. Scott, walking through his life down any city street at any given day, people would walk up to him and go, "You were fantastic in that." And it took 7 years for George C. Scott to figure out how brilliant Stanley was once he was able to reflect on it after the 7 years of watching it.
Right. Yeah. I seem to remember reading that he finally had said, you know what, I was funny in that movie.
Yeah.
And he was. I mean, he was so good in it. I love this story, Kevin, you shared about trying to get Kubrick to hug you. And he was a man who was not comfortable hugging. Would you mind sharing that story? I just thought it was such a great story.
Matthew and I are doing a scene together, walking through, and I'm trying to get Matthew to take me out into the shit, so to speak. And Stanley, as you said, loves to film take after take after take in 2 or 3 weeks of the same take.
Right.
And I remember halfway through it, I looked over at Stanley, and the set was filled with everybody, probably close to 100 people. And I said, Stanley, if we get this shot, I want a hug. And Stanley went, no, not going to happen, Kevin. I said, Stanley, I want my hug. And day after day, I kept promising him that hug was going to come. And he kept going, no. He eventually said to props, make sure Kevin gets another carton of Marlboro Reds. All right? That's my gift to you, Kevin. And I said, Stanley, no, I don't want the cigarettes. I want the hug. And it came down to the last day. And I looked over at Stanley, and Stanley knew I was going to come after him. And I started coming for my hug. He started backing up. And then as I got close enough in the proximity of us, he just held his arms out. And I accepted, and he accepted, and we hugged. And I'll tell you what was most interesting to me about that, and maybe that's the gift through my father, is compassion and understanding the humanity of people. In that moment when we hugged, I felt Stanley tighten his arms around me. He hadn't been hugged in, I think, for many, many years, and certainly not by a gentleman.
Right.
And I think that camaraderie at that moment really burst into that understanding of that bond between him and I, that I felt he was very much like my father in a lot of ways, talent-wise as well. And we really shared that hug. And it was a thirsty, thirsty hug. Love that about Stanley, that he was willing to allow somebody to break him down, as long as the somebody was willing to not take no for an answer.
Right. I love that. I love that story. What was it like, Kevin, to finally see it on the big screen? What was that experience like for you?
We were invited to, Tim Colsari and I actually went to the Westwood screening in Los Angeles. We were invited to it with the paparazzi, the journalists, the writers. We watched the film. Of course, it's difficult to see what the film is about when you're part of it. It's like Picasso cannot know what a Picasso painting is about. Mr. Kubrick cannot know what a Kubrick film is about. They don't see from that outside view. And I think I experienced the same thing. I know that we were part of something grand, and we left the theater, Tim and I, we went out and celebrated over a dinner in Beverly Hills, and it became more of the fine wine, as you say, before we both, I guess, understood what the film really was from a perspective standing back. It's taken a lot of years to really enjoy it. I've only seen it once myself. However, I have seen clips of it as we have gone along through our journey in life. And one other story I want to tell you about, I love this story. My mom phones me from Vancouver, Canada. She says, you're not going to believe what Warner Brothers did. And I said, what, Mom? She said, well, they're going to send over a limousine, and they've given me a movie theater in downtown Vancouver to invite anybody and any of my friends to come watch this movie you did.
Oh, wow.
I went, Mom, that's great. And then I ended up doing a press junket in Vancouver, British Columbia to promote the film. And I said to the news agency, I said, I would love to have a son-mom interview if you don't mind. And they said, that'd be great. There I was sitting with my mom, and we're being interviewed. I'm sitting on the floor. She's got her hands on my shoulders, sitting on the couch, and they ask her this question. So what do you think of your son being in Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket? And my mother answered, well, it's good, but I wish he was in Spaceballs. That's the one. Oh my God, Mom.
What a story.
And rest in peace, Mom.
Oh, that's a fantastic story. I'm curious, and what, Stephen and Lou, what do you feel Kubrick was communicating to the audience in this film? I mean, there's a lot of war movies, and it seems to me that this one's different in a lot of ways. So what for you, Lou, what do you think this film is really about?
Well, I mean, we know that it's a war movie, right? But is it against war? I think it's something like war is not good. It's like, this is the shit that happens, while you're in war. I mean, there's everyone's going to interpret it differently, because I have a different interpretation, but we actually know exactly what his thoughts were, and that's something that Stephen will share with you. So, but for me, it's everybody interprets it different. I go really deep into stuff, and I don't know if you have 2 hours to hear me out, but so that's a little bit about how my thoughts of what he was trying to express, and Stephen will take that from here, I'm sure.
I won't take it very far. I'm not the kind of guy that analyzes films. I analyze them in my own head, but I don't really talk about it, to be honest. So, I mean, I think it's a fantastic film. What do I think he was trying to say with it? I think I agree with Lou. He was trying to show that war isn't nice, and it messes people up. Yeah, that's my take on it.
It's sweet. Yeah, it's sorry, Kevin. Did you have something you wanted to add there?
I want to say this about this contemporary piece that we're embarking on. Today's contemporary freedom fighter, our men and women in uniform, I want them to be applauded and appreciated for the freedoms that they give us. I think this documentary may enlighten the new generation as to our contemporary freedom fighters, melded in with the Full Metal Jacket Vietnam experience, and show all those generations. One, we never forget. Two, you are so in our hearts. And by the way, I'll say this about our friend Lou Pizarro, a Marine. And by the way, his son also right now is overseas taking up these battles where his father left off. And Lou, just thank you so much. And Luis,
thank you.
Love you, brother. You come home safe. And we will keep the candle burning until you get there.
Thank you.
Yes, because, one thing that this is just my opinion, but watching it again, at least for me, because it is an ambiguous film. You're right, Lou, and it seems to cut through whether it's pro or anti-war, and just really the experience of what these soldiers go through. To me, in a way, it may be his most humanist film in that sense, because it's really just to show the conditioning and the abuse in the first half, even though there's some dark humor to go with it. I'm laughing but experiencing horror at the same time at that first half. But the second half, just to show the courage and the experience of what this is like, and that in a way maybe they weren't totally trained to kill. That there is, I think there's a reason why Matthew Modine has the peace symbol on his shirt and then the Born to Kill on his helmet, because it's those two things at conflict with one another. And really at the end, they do feel for that poor sniper. At least I took that everyone felt for that poor sniper, even though she was trying to kill them. So did they become complete war, killer machines? That's really up to the audience. But to me, it's just this. He seems to cut through necessarily anti or pro, and just what is it like to have to go to a war, in this case Vietnam, but any war, and the sacrifices that one gives up. I don't know if that was what anyone else here, if that resonates with anyone else, but that was my impression.
Well said. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, especially what you said about the sniper, because no one's really talked about that, but you you feel bad for her.
Yes.
At the same time. Yeah. Yes. And this is a job that our boys have to do to come home. They didn't ask, for her to shoot at them, and it's everyone has a different interpretation. And by the way, dude, I love that shirt, man. I just took a screenshot because I want to get one. How appropriate.
I know. I thought, I always try to do a little something wardrobe-wise for every movie I discuss. And I thought, okay, well, hopefully I won't look maybe like a little silly with this, but I took a chance. I took a chance. Kevin, from playing that last scene, you played Rafterman. What was just the emotional experience from the point of view of Rafterman, looking at this woman, young, like teenager, basically dead? What did you discover there?
What I was trying to infuse Rafterman with at that very moment was the launch of his own PTSD as he rotates back to the real world. the problems he was going to have, because as Lou just said and beautifully described, you didn't know how to feel. This was a young girl that was lying there.
Right.
And it is war, and you are there to survive it. But you do have these conflicts. And I try to infuse the character with that ugliness at that moment. What road he was now going to journey on because he had done this to this young girl in war.
Right.
So I figured he may have rotated back to the real world. I figured that his day was looming, where he was going to probably commit suicide from all of the problems psychologically.
Right.
As we understand today, we have 22 of our heroes in uniform that commit that suicide.
Right.
And I'll say to anybody who is listening to this conversation, you can find me on Facebook, and you can reach out to me, and I will give you my phone number. And I don't care if it's 4:00 in the morning, you need to talk. I am there to listen. I am there to be a part of your life, because you have given to me so much of your life. So that is available to any veteran. It's my way of saying, let's try to get it down from 22 to 0.
Right.
Hoorah.
Yes, absolutely. I know. Sorry, go ahead.
And these are important conversations we need to have within this documentary. It is the back to Untold story, but how does it influence today's society? How does it influence today's men and women coming home from these battlefields? And I want to have some of these conversations so that our young generation really understand it isn't just a video game, people. These are real families that will be hurt and devastated. And these are real men and women that have paid the ultimate price. We need to understand and talk it out loud with each other. I hope this documentary really is touched by that spirit. And I know I've got talented people with Stephen, Kelsey, Lou, to actually accomplish this voice.
Yes, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. The one thing that was in the trailer that I didn't know was that originally it was going to end with cutting the sniper's head off, which I thought it was a good change not to do that. Does anyone know, or maybe you don't want to share it, but does anyone know why Kubrick changed his mind on that ending?
I do not have that answer, but I think Stephen might.
Yeah, I believe he just thought it was too gratuitous and it wasn't needed.
Right.
Because I believe it was in the script from the word go, because Adam Baldwin was carrying a machete on his back throughout the film, but never actually got it out. So yeah, I believe it was shot, it was filmed, it was cut together, and then decided to be left out.
Maybe we'll use that.
Yeah. And I think it would have been too much. It would have.
Yeah, I think so too.
Ended the film on a bit of a gore fest, wouldn't it? Possibly. Although I'm sure he shot it very well.
Right.
I'm sure he didn't shoot it, like the B-movie horror stuff. But yeah, I don't think the film lost anything for not having that.
Hey, we can use it on our documentary, man. We'll just do special effects to where you just see the reflection or the shadow of the head rolling. You don't see no gore.
There you go. There you go.
I love that Stanley didn't use it, and for that very reason, he leaves the audience in turmoil themselves when they walk out of the theater. You want to root for your American heroes, GIs, who are on that battlefield, and then all of a sudden you've got this new equation where it's a 13-year-old girl lying in the dirt, shot up, and because your feelings are in conflict, he lets you walk out of that theater going and investigating. How should you be? How should you feel? War is not a win situation for either side, obviously.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it would have lost some of the humanity from the people, the men there if they had done that. And so I think we saw more of the peace the peace symbol on the shirt come through in their behavior, and then that great singing the Mickey Mouse song as they head back. I mean, what an interesting choice, and again, so ambiguous. Like, why that? What is that? I know they were singing it earlier, but it's almost like reverting, going back to adolescence, almost to an easier time for them, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's what he was saying. I think that's what Kubrick was saying. The fact that these were just kids.
Right.
I think it was to emphasize the fact that they are just kids.
Mm-hmm.
Let me add to that, guys, too. So again, everyone has different interpretation of certain things, and I remember specifically during boot camp singing this song. Not only this song, so it was for us. It was more of, not being treated like kids, but following orders. And if someone tells you to do something, just because it might seem that it's childish, it's for a reason, to save lives. We also used to sing the Barney song. So when I heard, again, there's so many different things that bring back such awesome memories, literally a whole, a squad of, Marines, Marine recruits at the time, singing that song. It's great. We love it. Great memories,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to share something. My wife just handed me a phone, her phone, and I didn't know this even existed, but it says National Actors Day is September 8th. Did you know there was a National Actors Day?
I did not.
And it's to celebrate the U.S., to honor the actors who gave their talent, time, and energy just to entertain us. Did not know this existed.
Well, there you go. Good thing we're
And I
doing
had
this
to-
today.
I did. My wife slapped me
Awesome.
upside the head after the show.
Yes, I did not know that, but that is good to know that on the day we are recording this. So talking a little bit about the Indiegogo campaign. Where can I will leave the link in the description box for where people can leave a donation, and how much longer is the campaign to go? How much longer do people have to donate?
We've got about 4 weeks left.
4 weeks?
Yeah. So we'd really like people to go and have a look at that. Check out the trailer, which pretty much gives you a quick oversight on what we're trying to achieve in under 3 minutes. I think it is a trailer, and then there's a few paragraphs explaining it in a bit more detail. So anyone that can help us, the sooner we get the money raised, the sooner we can start. If we don't meet the targets, we're going to get started at some point. It might just take longer to complete the thing, but we're going ahead. We just need the support, and the more support we get towards the budget, the quicker and better this thing's going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And we got some really cool incentives. I mean, so if you guys go to the page, you're going to see the really phenomenal, awesome stuff. In fact, I'd like to add another one, gentlemen. How about one of the incentives will be an awesome big Stanley Kubrick hug from Kevyn Major Howard.
There you go.
Yeah.
How's that?
1 degree of separation. There you go.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's a great idea. I want one of
There are
those.
some amazing perks on this Indiegogo page. Please check them out. To every veteran, this is applause to your effort to wear that uniform and to fight for our freedoms. And I want that story explained. To any big investor who wants to get behind this and really promote this documentary being the worthwhile that it is, reach out to one of our producers, Kelsey, Lou, Stephen, and let's talk about that big special check you could write, and let's get this thing rocking and rolling. It needs to be.
Right. Yes, certainly. And is there a place where people can receive notifications about it? Is there like a Facebook group or an Instagram page or anything like that?
Well, we're putting a lot of this stuff when things come along that we need to push out there. We're putting them through the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society group currently, because that's got a very good Kubrick-centric membership. We will be putting a page together specifically for the documentary at some point when we feel like we've got good content and facts that we can put down there. But currently, all the updates and the promotional stuff is going through the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society Facebook group currently.
Great. And where can people find that your podcast, Stephen?
Well, if they've got a podcast player on their phones, just type in the search into the search bar Kubrick's Universe. And if they don't have a podcast player on their phone, or indeed they don't have a phone, which is unlikely, they can just go on the internet on their laptop and type Kubrick's Universe into Google, and they will go to the website where all the episodes are listed, and they can just pick an episode and press play. So Kubrick's Universe, I think there's only one.
Great. Fantastic. Is there anything else, anyone, Lou or Kevin or Stephen, you wanted to share?
Just that this documentary is going to be unlike any other Kubrick documentary, because there's been several Kubrick documentaries. You know, there's the one from 2001 that Kubrick's brother-in-law Jan made, which is a great documentary. A Life in Pictures, right? A Life in Pictures, very good documentary.
Yes,
There's been a few since Kubrick Remembered. But there hasn't. I don't think personally there's been any really good ones about a particular film. They've all had the little short ones on the extras on the DVDs, but I don't think any documentary has gone into this sort of detail and length. You know, this is going to be a full-length feature documentary. So yeah, we're going to go really deep. We're going to get into those tunnels.
You know, and I want to add, this is a great opportunity for everybody on this planet to get involved, to be a part of this legacy that's going to continue for generations to come. So we certainly appreciate everybody's time and effort. So thank you guys, man. Appreciate it.
Great.
Bert, last thing I want to say to you is thank you very, very much for being the gracious host you have been.
Oh, my pleasure.
For helping us get the word out. And to all our veterans again, we think of you dearly. You're always on my mind, my family's mind, and stay safe as much as possible and come home.
Great. That's a great place to end it right there. So again, I will leave the link in the donation box below for where you can find the Indiegogo campaign and leave a donation so they can get this great documentary made, and where you can also follow Stephen's great Facebook group and check out his podcast. So gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time out once again for coming on, and let's hope I can have you all back sometime again down the road.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/RobertBellissimo@the-movies for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find just below the video frame, right beside the like and dislike links. Just click the thanks link, and from there, you can leave a donation if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.